Hi, I'm Lisa Anderson, President of LMA Consulting Group and host of Supply Chain Chats. I'm thrilled to be here today with Patrick Daly, who's a consultant in Ireland. He works with manufacturers, distributors, and logistics organizations, and he specializes in logistics and supply chain. So Patrick, maybe start by just, telling us a little bit more about yourself. And so tomorrow, the new European-US trade deal goes into effect. So maybe let's start with that topic. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so I'm based in Dublin in Ireland, as you said. I'm a supply chain and logistics consultant and have been for a very long time. I don't know, maybe 25 years at this stage. Based in Dublin, but work internationally. And lots of those companies that we work with, manufacturing, distribution, and logistics services companies, are international organizations or multinationals. Lots of them are American companies based here in Europe, but also Irish multinational companies working in other parts of the world, and national, home-owned distribution companies and logistics and transport companies. And yes, as you say, the new EU-US trade deal, which was the subject of some controversy and negotiations, yes, and some approval holdups for various reasons, some of them practical, some of them political. But it finally comes into force tomorrow. I think the commitment from the EU was that it would be implemented or come into force before the 4th of July, so the 250th anniversary of the United States. So it comes into force, and in essence, we're talking about, in very, very, very simple terms, kind of free access for US industrial goods and some other classes of products, and 15% tariffs on European goods going, certain categories of European goods going into the United States. So from a European point of view, I guess it's been viewed almost as a necessary evil, in the sense that, and damage limitation, in the sense that, let's take this, it gives predictability and it could be worse. But it's not coming into force with any kind of enthusiasm, or it's more viewed as kind of a problem that is unhelpful and probably unnecessary and just to be worked around. I think that's the way it's being viewed from the European side.
Yeah, understandable. And that, like you described it, that's in essence what I've understood as well. I mean, I think from the US point of view, there's interest and excitement about having better access to some European markets. And there's quite a bit of investments and purchases that Europe is going to make as well. My understanding, there's like $750 billion that's going to occur in terms of U.S. energy purchases, and 600 billion of other items as well. From a manufacturing point of view, it should be stimulating some investments into the U.S., which, of course, in our world is quite important. There's quite a bit of investment going on, and I know you work with some of these same companies. Like, for example, pharmaceuticals are pretty significant in Ireland. Specifically. And Ireland's really it's a hub of manufacturing activity. It's also a logistics hub for Europe. Maybe tell us a bit more about that. And if any of your contacts or clients are they switching, are they going to move more towards a regional model where they're producing more in the US? And then producing maybe in Ireland for Europe, or what's the current strategy?
Well, there's all sorts of things going on. So Europe is going through a structural transformation for lots of reasons. Some of them geopolitical, and some of them demographic, and some of them technological. But just on the investment and the trade balance thing first, and then we'll go on to some of the others. So while Europe has made some commitments in terms of purchases or investments, again, from a European point of view, it's almost like, okay, let's say we're doing this, but we were doing it anyway, in the sense that the stock of European investment in the US is something in the order of $2.7 trillion already. And the stock of US investment in Europe is about 2.1 trillion. So Europe's actually invested already more in the US than the US in Europe, in the EU, strictly speaking.
Right.
In Europe, when you take into account United Kingdom and some other countries, it's slightly different. So the trade relationship or the business relationship between Europe and the US is a lot more than a trade balance. And
Yeah,
although
yeah,
there's a deficit in the sense that Europe exports more to the US than vice versa, and that therefore this trade deal maybe opens opportunities for US
right.
goods exporters. In services terms, the US was already exporting more to the EU than the EU to the US. So in essence, the trade balance was not as unfavorable as it seemed to be, and the investment balance, it was already favorable to the United States. So this is why we're kind of saying it's can't really see the point of it, but and anyway, we have it. So and I guess one interesting thing is that Ireland, although it's a small place and receives a lot of inward investment from the United States in pharmaceutical and medtech and chemicals, as you said, Ireland is also the fifth largest FDI investor into the United States, even in the world, even though it's such a small country. So what's going on in Europe? As I said, Europe is going through a structural shift. So the energy issue is a big manufacturing conundrum for Europe, because unlike the United States, Europe doesn't have the luxury of lots of fossil fuels on its territory that it can dip into. So up until the war between Ukraine and Russia, a formula in Europe was cheap energy from Russia, manufacturing and exporting to the world at large, benefiting from globalization and low tariffs and so on. And that model now appears to be broken. And now we see with the war in Iran, again, fossil fuels from the Middle East is not exactly a sure thing. And substituting dependence on Russia, the Middle East, with a dependence on the United States is not geopolitically or geoeconomically a wise move either. So you see a huge push in Europe towards green energy. And that's not just due to green values, although that's part of it. It's a geopolitical necessity, because we can't be like this, dependent on external partners. So I think from a manufacturing point of view, you're going to see lots of opportunities in that green energy space. And that then gives rise to, we have a China problem as well, which is that, they're dominating EVs and batteries and lots of manufacturing sectors, and there's a big imbalance in trade between Europe and China in that respect. And because we need to move much quicker towards renewables, that makes us a little bit vulnerable on that score as well. So those are some observations. There are more things going on. But I'll let you fire another couple of questions and see where.
Well, since you brought up energy, didn't Germany used to produce more energy, but did they stop a while back, and we can't turn that back on?
The Germans had a nuclear industry that during the mandate of Angela Merkel, they decided to stop and to shut down lots of nuclear power plants. And they did that, or they started that at the time, and they had this formula of cheap energy from Russia. And that model is now broken. And one thing that happened, ironically, was that they had to switch back to coal when the nuclear was taken out, and then the supplies from Russia were curtailed. So
Which is less energy efficient, to be sure.
yeah, so they have a bit of a conundrum there. So I think the whole nuclear debate's going to come back with force. I think for Europe it probably has to be the thing that underpins the renewables on top, to offer that stability. So that stability that other places might get from fossil fuels, in Europe it might be much more a nuclear play, and this highlights again how different European countries are from each other. France has a huge commitment to nuclear energy and always has, and they have been much more insulated from some of the energy shocks than some other countries like Germany or the United Kingdom. And Spain, in the last 10 years, has made a huge play towards renewables, particularly in terms of solar power. They have a lot of sunshine down there. And they have seen much less volatility in gas prices through the latest energy crises in Spain, which used to have very high energy prices and now has very competitive energy prices. And I guess that's another point to make for an American audience, that sometimes for shorthand we speak of America and Europe, but America, or the United States of America, is one political entity, one fiscal union, one currency, and Europe is the European Union is 27 individual sovereign states. And then wider Europe, when you include countries like the United Kingdom and Norway and Switzerland and Turkey and Russia and the Western Balkans like Serbia, these countries are not members of the European Union. And then within the European Union, although there is a common currency, not all 27 members use the common currency. So I guess the point is, for Americans looking at Europe, not to think of it as an entity like the United States. It's very much, it's a common market, or a single market, but it's not a single country. And therefore, if you're looking at Europe with the new trade deal as a place where you can do business, you need to pick where, and you need to become very familiar with the language, with the culture, with the legal system and the tax regime. Because if it's France and Belgium, say, that you're interested in, that's going to be very different than, say, Poland and the Czech Republic, or Ireland and the United Kingdom. They would all be very, very different. And the United Kingdom even is not even in the European Union, and Ireland is. So you have these complications. So from an American point of view, it's very much to think very clearly about where and for what reason, and to adjust your approach in that way.
Well, that's a really good point. And that's a really good point, really, about the availability of energy, because since we're talking about manufacturing and logistics, they run on energy. So It's got to be available. How has the Strait of Hormuz, it must have affected some of these areas more than others. Like you said, France, I guess, was able to continue on, which is probably good from an aerospace point of view, aerospace production for Airbus. Is that, but I don't know, how's it been with Ireland? 'Cause I know you're a hub.
Yeah, it's had an unequal effect, and then different countries have reacted in different ways. So this is another feature of the different legal and government regimes in different countries. So as I said, France and Spain were insulated, one because of renewables, the other because of nuclear. Ireland, in some ways, was insulated, at least at the consumer level, because the Irish state coffers were in a very healthy position, and they were able to provide lots of subsidies to cushion the increase in costs. Whereas United Kingdom, where the public finances are much tighter, they weren't able to be so generous. So it's been a mixed picture like that. In terms of transport and logistics in Europe, again, we're going through a transition where the European Union is looking to integrate transport infrastructure across the continent, and there are lots of initiatives going on like that, in rail, in ports, in airports, in road networks, and that's going to help the continent to be more articulated from a logistics point of view. And there's also strong investments into multimodal facilities that you see popping up in different parts of the continent, where you can move seamlessly from road to rail or rail to road, or to maritime, and sometimes even air freight. So there's a lot of work going on in those sectors. Another really interesting one, and probably one of opportunity for American companies, is that the whole defense attitude has changed. So with the war in Ukraine and the threat from Russia, so NATO has enlarged. Sweden and Finland joined NATO in the last number of years after being neutral for many, many years. And most countries, including Germany and the United Kingdom and France and Poland especially, have increased their defense spending dramatically. In fact, really, the closer the country is to Russia, the more they're increasing their defense spending. So you'll find countries on the western periphery like Portugal and Spain maybe less enthusiastic about that, and countries like Poland and Finland and Estonia are very much on that trajectory. Now, the issue is that the spending is increasing dramatically, but again, because there are lots of different sovereign individual countries, it's difficult to integrate and get the best effect for the spend. So there are opportunities for companies, because some of that money will be spent in Europe, and some of that money will be spent outside Europe and potentially in the United States, or American companies that in the defense sector with operations in Europe might benefit from that additional spending as well. And I think that
good point.
I think that's a permanent thing. That's not going to change. I think it's almost like Europe has awoken from a stupor with regard to defense, and America has been making that point for a long time, and even going back to President Obama and earlier, the American administrations have been saying that Europe needs to take more of the burden. So it wasn't just a Trump thing.
Right.
And I think the fact that Russia did what it did really is the straw that broke the camel's back. And we see the spending increasing, and I think that's going to continue. And I guess the other important thing is that Ukraine, as a country which is now on the accession path to the European Union, is not just a country that needs help and aid. Ukraine is coming to the table as a battle-hardened military power that knows how to fight 21st century wars, which, as we saw in Iran, is not straightforward. So Ukraine is coming to the table with a lot to offer, and I think that's really going to bolster Europe from a defense point of view.
True. They have made some advancements with like drone technologies and
Exactly.
And from that point of view, I mean, wars are never what you want. Although it's certainly prompted the U.S. into making some advancements when it comes to like drones and that type, fighting drones as well. So there is going to be a lot of opportunities when it comes to defense spending. To your point, I agree.
Yeah. So in Europe, I think defense and energy, transport and manufacturing, high-end manufacturing, I think there are opportunities there. So you see the core countries like Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, although it's not EU, it's very tightly associated with the EU. These are countries with huge expertise in precision engineering and manufacturing and so on. And then as you work your way out from there in terms of the Eastern European countries like the Czech Republic and Slovakia and Poland, they're very good industrial production companies. Then you have the likes of Ireland in terms of pharmaceutical, med tech, chemicals, highly regulated businesses. So Ireland is a hub for that kind of thing. And then you have the France with aerospace and defense. So there's different regions that have different strengths. And from an American point of view, looking at the continent as an investment location, it's good to be aware of those different strengths in the different parts of the continent.
Yeah, very true. Well, from that point of view, that's one of the last topics that I'd like to discuss is the reshoring, nearshoring. Like, I know that since Ireland's focused on pharmaceuticals, and the U.S. is definitely focused on making sure that we have the domestic ability to produce them. I think there's some, I don't know, investments or collaboration going on there. I don't know if you know anything about that. And then also from a European's perspective, I'm wondering what you're seeing as far as, what you're doing as far as nearshoring, reshoring, or, what's your strategy?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's a new term, but I think probably what's going is a thing called kind of right shoring, which is maybe doing the right thing in the right place. So what I've noticed among some multinationals based here in Ireland is switching around what they produce where. So a lot of whether it's primary API like active pharmaceutical ingredients, perhaps manufactured here and sent to the US to be packaged. Some of that may be shifting back to the US and vice versa, so that Ireland is becoming more of a EMEA hub rather than exporting back to America. And then in a wider sense across the continent, you're probably seeing some high-end manufacturing being brought back close to home, or either into the core of Europe or into those countries that are closer and friendlier. So Europe and the European Union has arrangements with countries like Morocco and countries like Turkey, who are benefiting from some of that reshoring or nearshoring, as are some of the Eastern European countries that are already inside the European Union, benefiting from some manufacturing coming back. So it's
like Poland as an example, or
sorry,
is that right?
Again?
Like Poland, or
like Poland and Czech Republic, even Bulgaria and Romania, countries that have benefited. I think Romania has probably done better than Bulgaria, or taken better advantage of the opportunities. So yeah, those shifts are underway.
So in essence, like those are sounds like they're lower cost manufacturing areas. So similar to like maybe Mexico and, in relation to the US, or there's the advantage, like you said, of the US is there's a lot of different opportunities in states. So there's certainly lower cost states. And we see all the time manufacturing moving from like California, as an example, to the South or Texas, or, wherever they can produce it with lower cost energy and lower cost materials.
Yeah, I think lower cost, but also lower risk. So if you think of Europe up until, let's say, 2020, thereabouts. So very much globalization to optimize efficiency, arbitrage with regard to labor costs and so on, and not so much concern about security and safety. It was kind of the world is flat kind of mentality, and you can do anything anywhere. And that model is now broken. So now everything has this overlay of security and safety and predictability. So transport is a security issue, manufacturing locations is a security issue, energy is a security issue. So now Europe is trying to globalize in that sense, but always with an eye to security and strategic sustainability of supply chains.
Yeah, very true. Because actually, Europe has had a lot of sustainability type of regulations go into effect as well. They were looking to, to continue down that path. Are you still seeing that? I know it's, of course, it's still one of the objectives, but are you seeing it as, taking the forefront still here, or are you more focused on how are you gonna ensure supply in Europe?
Well, I think the regulatory aspect of Europe is still there. It's maybe being tempered a little bit by pragmatic reality. You don't necessarily want to shoot yourself in the foot, but at the same time, if Europe is moving towards more sustainable production, which people believe in the long term, or the people who propose it believe in the long term, that it's actually going to be economically better. But in the meantime, they don't necessarily want to be undercut by Chinese or other imports that are being made in environments where regulations are lower. And that's where you see these kind of equalization carbon taxes, these border carbon taxes coming in. So I think that the regulatory aspect in Europe is going to be there, and it's even giving rise to tensions with the US over the latest deal, where there's digital services taxation that European countries are considering, and also regulatory protection of minors and so on in social media, and some of that's giving rise to tensions with the United States. So I think that's going to be an ongoing thing, and it'll give rise to problems here and there. But maybe just as well, as we come towards the end, maybe to just put a stake in the ground for Ireland, in the sense that it's my home country here in Europe, and Ireland and the United States have had this long running economic integration going on for a long time, and it's two ways. As I said, the FDI is fairly evenly balanced, but there's no doubt that Ireland has benefited tremendously through American investments into this country, particularly in the pharma, medtech, and tech sectors. But I think some of the advantages that Ireland offers is the fact that we are English speaking. We have a common law legal system, which is different from most of the rest of the European Union, but it is similar to the American legal system. We are in the Eurozone, so we're the only English-speaking country with a common law system inside the Eurozone. So not just inside the EU, but inside the Eurozone, the currency zone. Ireland has generally a pro-business, politically stable environment, so a lot of the political upheavals that you see in other countries haven't really affected here. There's already a very strong US corporate familiarity with Ireland, and there's kind of deep pharma, medtech, and technology clusters already set up here. So it's a good regulatory environment and credibility for the FDA and EU regulated sectors. So it's an ideal gateway, if you like, to the European Union, also to the United Kingdom, and also to the US and global markets. So that's my bit of patriotism.
Yeah, no, that's good, and it is. I know it. Actually, from that point of view, I know Ireland has some tax advantages, and that's one of the things that is gone into effect now in the US is some additional tax advantages for manufacturers, which should go a long way. I mean, it does make a difference. It's how we ended up with so much manufacturing, to your point, in Ireland, and it's a good way for the two countries to collaborate. Correct. The other thing that I would ask or point out here is that I think one of the other things that you focus on, there's a lot of automation and technology is going into effect so that they can continue to keep costs intact. Is that what you're seeing across your client base right now with
yeah, because
going on?
there are demographic challenges as well, and societal changes where it's becoming increasingly difficult, particularly say in transport and logistics, distribution centers, warehouses, fork truck drivers. These roles are becoming increasingly difficult to fill. So we're seeing a huge move towards automation, particularly in distribution and logistics, automated order picking and storage retrieval systems in distribution centers. There's a lot of that going on, and lots of innovation in that sector. So lots of the vendors are coming up with ever newer and smarter solutions for sorting and queuing and picking and so on, and then integrating into that artificial intelligence is making it even smarter. So even in countries like Ireland was a country that for a long time resisted kind of automation in logistics, but I've been involved in several projects in recent years, and we're seeing more and more of that. So yeah, that is a definite trend.
Well, very good. Well, thank you, Patrick. It was great to have you join us today. It seems like there's a lot of opportunity in the U.S. and the EU and Ireland, et cetera, to collaborate together and also to learn from each other, because there's definite, like you said, each area has its strengths. So thank you for joining, and we look forward to talking with you again next time.
Yeah, look forward to it. Yeah, I think just a parting thing, when you look at the trade, both in goods and services, and the foreign direct investment each way, the transatlantic relationship is much deeper and much stronger than most of us realize. And particularly with the political environment that we've been living through in recent years, you would think almost that we were enemies, but we're so integrated that it's really something we need to work on.
For sure. I mean, there's actually products that go back and forth just to get finalized between the U.S. and Europe, and so there's a lot of interaction. And to your point, if you add services, that's like a whole different, that changes the puzzle quite a bit, rather than just talking about manufacturing and logistics. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. We'll see where it all goes. Should be good for us to help clients, be successful during these rapidly changing times, I guess you could say.
Exactly.
So yes, actually, that's a good point. And where can folks find you, Patrick?
Yeah, they find me on LinkedIn under my name, Patrick Daly, and also my website, which is Alba Logistics, ALBA Logistics.com. So you'll find lots of resources there and all my contact details.
All right. Well, very good. Well, thank you, Patrick, and we'll talk to you again next time.
Thanks, Lisa. It's been a pleasure.